Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the former president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, gets a criminal contempt referral to the DOJ. Meanwhile, the January 6th committee hearings blow up. Kentucky tornado death toll now at 88 and climbing. California reinstitutes indoor mask mandates, and the Supreme Court lets the New York State vaccine mandate for healthcare workers stand. Also on the program today, Biden administration now admits it was not legally compelled to issue massive oil and gas drilling leases. New Omicron study coming out of South Africa has much more resistance to 2 shots of Pfizer. Protection down to 30 some odd percent, according to this study. 70% protection against hospitalization with 2 shots of Pfizer. Israel complains it needs U.S. airborne refueling tankers to threaten an attack on Iran. The internal battle at the FDIC breaks open and tells a story of this administration. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Little flying by the seats of our pants. I sort of always do that anyways. But you will notice Emma Vigeland not with us today. She was here until she got word that her friend just tested positive for COVID. So she ran out of the office and is getting a rapid test at the moment. That's part of it.
Her friend said, a quote, feels like COVID, which is
not a good sign.
Yeah.
Not a good sign. I don't even know what that means. No. I haven't gotten COVID, but you don't want... I mean, I just feel, this is just flying around, and you've been boosted, right?
I am about to get boosted, but not yet been boosted.
So Matt's a little bit, little unboosted.
I was actually worried I had COVID. That's why I didn't get boosted this week, and I got tested. It's negative, so...
thanks for telling me.
So.
I've been boosted. I'm in the fortress.
I should get the Moderna booster, shouldn't I?
Yep.
Yeah. Got some.
Why not? Why not mix and match?
Exactly.
If I had the opportunity to do it again, I would get that. Maybe I'll just go in and get a booster anyways. I'm on a vaccine jag. I'll get it with my my second shot of the shingles vaccine. I'll get another flu shot. I don't care. What else can I get? I'll take it. I'm a pincushion as far as I'm concerned these days. We will get to all of that stuff. Also, would you do me a favor, Matt, when you get a chance? We may have a new segment today. Our crackers and cheese segment that we may be introducing. You'll see the bag of crackers we got over there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the cheese. But that's it. I just want to buy the ready just in case we need it. We may have some crackers and cheese today. We'll see. We're going to get to some of this big story Sadly, it involves playing Lynn Cheney without actively criticizing her. There'll be anytime that we ever mention Lynn Cheney or we play anything that involves Lynn Cheney, please be aware that the critique is understood. Liz Cheney, whatever. I don't care. Either Cheney, any Cheney. But let's play this first. Fox News. Are they covering the fact that multiple members of their on-camera staff were texting the White House during the January 6th riots in the Capitol? Please tell the president to tell people to stop. Please. Are they reporting that? No. They are still very, very concerned about the plot surrounding their $500,000 Christmas tree that was lit on fire. They're going to get to the bottom of this. Incidentally, the guy's been caught, and apparently he's just a guy who has some mental and emotional issues. Frankly...
Has he been executed yet, though?
Well, we'll see. But frankly, I mean, I don't know how many mental and emotional issues you have to want to light a $500,000 tree on fire. Like I would be on favor of maybe pushing it over. But let's, here is Peter Doocy, Steve's son, no nepotism there, at the White House press pool asking the really important questions.
That big cities are dealing with these smash and grab robberies right now, an increase in criminal activity because some prosecutors are too soft on crime.
I would say we have seen, I'm not going to attribute the reasoning from here. What I will tell you is we have seen an increase in crime over the course of the pandemic. There are a range of reasons for that. And what our focus is on is what we can do to address it. The president has proposed additional funding in the budget to make sure local police departments and cops have the funding they need. We have also worked directly with police departments in areas where they are seeing the highest impact of the crime, the retail theft, which we have great concern about. That's what our focus is on currently, is action and doing what we can to make sure the funding is out there to the communities that need it the most.
But I guess what good does it do if you're going to give police departments extra money if they arrest bad guys and they bring them to jail and then they're not prosecuted, they're just right back out on the streets?
I think, Peter, what our focus is on is making sure that the local leaders, the police officers and departments who know what they need for these communities have the assistance and the funding they need. And that's what we're working around the clock on.
So the final one would be, just in the last week, we saw a New York Post item about a pickpocket with more than 30 arrests back out on the street. We've seen an arsonist burn down a $500,000 Christmas tree in New York City back out on the streets. Does the president think that that's good governing?
Again, I think I've spoken to the president's concerns about retail theft. If you have specific and the actions we've taken for specific cases, I would point you to the local police departments or the Department of Justice. Go ahead, Kelly.
Is it possible that Steve Doocy or Peter Doocy is not aware that these prosecutors have no association with the federal government whatsoever? I mean, even if the premise was correct, which it's not, the lighting of the Fox Christmas tree is not a sign that there is more crime in the country. The fact of the matter is there is not more crime in the country.
Yeah.
There are some high-profile thefts that were in San Francisco
that get a lot of play in media.
Yeah, of course, because they're on video and it looks like a huge heist.
It's like Ocean's 12, but with like Clorox and maybe some watches.
Exactly. But this is sort of like, you know, this is akin to the war on Christmas. This is, I mean, frankly, this is, it's very well done. If you were to listen to the narrative that has been created in the news, you would think that inflation is crushing people, but also the reason why inflation is crushing people is because of the child tax credit. That's what Joe Manchin is saying. The reason why we have inflation is because people have more money. And therefore, they're being crushed, even though they have more money. You would also believe that there are tens of thousands of people leaving their works because of the vaccine mandate. We have no military. I saw a headline today that 27 people in our Air Force, have been dismissed because they won't get vaccinated. 27. Not 2,700, not 27,000. 27. And the other one would be that we're having this massive crime spree, as indicated by the fact that Fox News' Christmas tree got lit on fire.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, like, with regards to the violent crime during a pandemic, that's not uncharacteristic of pandemics. I was just, early in the pandemic, I read Daniel Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year. It's like 1700s or whatever. And they had a problem because they had to keep replacing the guards that were making sure people were staying in homes because people kept killing them, right?
We're not quite at that level. But yeah, there's a certain inevitable when you're having basically parts of society somewhat break down because of a pandemic.
And support doesn't go to the people who need it the most. First thing I heard, like, the day that the checks were going out is I didn't file taxes. I'm not going to get any of that stuff. So, like, huge parts of the economy aren't formal in that way, and they're left out. So, like, of course, there's going to be a rise in these sorts of crimes of like deprivation and, you know, serious pressure.
We're going to take we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about some sponsors that we have on the show, and then we're going to get into some of the stuff that's coming out about January 6th. If you own a business, you know that there's not enough hours in the day to waste time playing phone tag. Well, the list of customers that you need to reach doesn't get any shorter, especially when business is good. That's why local businesses everywhere turn to Podium. Podium makes every interaction as easy as sending a text. So everything that makes your business great can get done faster. I think the Mac place that we uses that. And it's been incredibly helpful. It's really the only, except for the fact that we couldn't get the routers in for like 8 months because of the supply lines or whatnot. It makes everything that we get, every contact that we have with them, easier. And Podium isn't just a better way to communicate, it's a better way to do everything. Gathering reviews, collecting payments, and even marketing to your customers, Podium makes it all as easy as pressing send. You won't just free up more time, you'll grow your business and get more done. With Podium, you close deals with customers before the competition even has a chance to call them back. Like I say, I haven't used it as a business. That's not what we do. But as a customer, I appreciate getting some type of response time. Not even going to tell you what happened to me with, God, what was it the other day that I had that was driving me crazy? I can't remember. I was on the phone for an hour and a half. Oh, with my bank. They locked me out of my, but it's not a totally different story. Join more than 100,000 businesses that already use Podium to streamline their customer interactions. Get started for free at podium.com/majority or sign up for a paid Podium account and get a free credit card reader. Restrictions apply. That's podium.com/majority. If you own a small business, local business, check it out. Meanwhile, also, if you own a business, you know scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Well, Shopify is here to help. It's got tools and resources that make it easy for any business to succeed from down the street to around the globe. Shopify powers over 1.7 million businesses from first sale to full scale. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed with Shopify. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps. It includes Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, more. Synchronize your online and in-person sales and gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is possibility, and it is powered by Shopify. If you go to shop.majorityreportradio.com, you can see an example of just one of the most basic uses of Shopify. That's where we sell our merch, and it's been super easy. And as you grow, and if you sell offline and online, as a lot of places do, that gets integrated with Shopify. You should check it out. Go to shopify.com/majority, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/majority right now. Shopify.com/majority. Lastly, winter is just about here. Many places in the country it is already. And the outdoors is calling. And if you want to answer, backcountry.com is the place to go. When you shop at backcountry.com, you can pick up the phone and talk gear with an actual former Olympian. It's founded by former Olympic skier. Backcountry.com is the best place for outdoor gear and apparel. They got Patagonia, they got Yeti, Santa Cruz bicycles, they got everything there. It's sort of insane. Kuhl coats. Am I pronouncing that right? Kuhl? That's the one I have. Has thousands of your favorite brands and products for every outdoor adventure. When you ask for help at backcountry.com, you're not getting an outdoor hobbyist. Backcountry gearheads are experts, and they give you a masterclass in the great outdoors. From providing you a detailed pack list for your next summit to figuring out what winter jacket works for you, you're in good hands. Everything at Backcountry, everything it sells is the highest quality. But the Backcountry gearheads are the real difference. And I will tell you this. Last year, I got snowboards. Didn't want to deal with the rental. We don't go anywhere special, really, for snowboarding. Just the local, like, they're not hills, but they're mountains, sort of, around here, hill mountain. But I didn't want to rent for the kids. Mila is basically locked in. So I bought her a board and boots. Saul, I bought a board because I can change the, when you buy a snowboard, you got to buy the snowboard, you got to buy the bindings. And I will tell you who knows nothing about that stuff. Me. They walked me through both purchases, and it was a breeze, and it worked out perfectly for the kids. That was a huge, huge help. We got boards, we got boots, and we got bindings. Go to backcountry.com/majority, enter promo code majority, and you'll get 15% off your first full price purchase. Some exclusions apply. So go right now, get 15% off at backcountry.com/majority and enter promo code majority. Backcountry.com/majority. Don't forget to enter promo code majority. All right, let's get into some of this stuff with the January 6th committee. There was a story that came out that Hunter Walker has been writing these stories in Rolling Stone about this couple that was involved. They're basically, MAGA heads. They were involved with the Stop the Steal bus tour. And that's the story we had talked about a couple of weeks ago, where they met with Representative Gozar, who said, blanket pardons could be available. And it turns out what he was talking about was that this couple was involved with Steve Bannon in their build a wall scam. And for some reason, they were not rolled up when the other people were. But they were worried about their criminal liability. So the idea of a pardon was pretty intriguing to them. It's unclear exactly what information they're going to provide other than the fact that they had been hearing about violence that was being planned for that day on January 6th, and they warned Mark Meadows about it. I mean, it's becoming increasingly clear that there were people who knew that there was something else going on, sort of embedded within this stuff. And a lot of people were sort of duped on some level. This couple claims that they thought, they were led to believe, or they assumed, that Trump had access to special information about the stealing of the election.
Yeah, I'm the president. I got the best information.
I control the deep state. And it turns out like they thought at this rally he was going to unveil this information. And when he didn't, they were like, what is going on? And instead, he ended the rally by saying, like literally the last words that he said was like, go to the Capitol now.
A lot of ways, I meant that poetically, though.
Now, this couple apparently went back to their hotel because they're like, we're getting out of here. Something's gone very wrong. And they have since been essentially on the lam because they're afraid that right-wingers are coming after them. It's, there's a certain amount of paranoia that goes with this crew of people anyway, so it's hard to tell what their concerns are. But yesterday and today, Liz Cheney, apparently, because she's one of two Republicans on the committee, was charged with reading off some of these text messages that they got from Mark Meadows that came from Fox News hosts. And it's clear a lot of these people were like, wait a sec. I mean, first off, it's also amazing that these people
took this long.
They're so integrated. Well, I mean, a couple things. One, Mark Meadows is an idiot. You don't give the committee all of the relevant documents you have and then go like, but wait a second, I'm now not going to testify. What happened is Meadows is such a moron that he thought that Trump would appreciate the way that he wrote about him in the book. Because in Meadows' mind, saying that Trump was ill during going around made him seem like an ubermensch.
It was like the Michael Jordan flu game in Utah.
Exactly. Meadows was like, dude, this is a brag. You had COVID and went around and just like...
And I still crushed it.
But then apparently Trump was like, no, you're not supposed to tell anybody that I had COVID. I was trying to infect people. And so then essentially, I guess Trump basically said, you better not testify now in front of that committee, you idiot. And Meadows was like, oh, okay. I already gave them all my documentation, though. So now all this stuff gets rolled out. And Meadows, of course, is not there to testify. He was trying to avoid in the first place, was trying to avoid a criminal contempt charge that would be voted upon by all of his former colleagues in the House. Apparently, maintaining good relationships with them was pretty important to this dunce. And instead, what he did was give everything to the committee and then get a criminal contempt referral. Now, look, the implications of this for the criminal contempt thing are virtually nil as far as I can tell. Even Bannon is not going to court until July. Presumably, Meadows would go to court after that. The Democrats are probably going to lose the House anyways in 2022, although it's not for sure. And also, they may look upon Meadows in a different way than they did Bannon. Meadows was the chief of staff. If there's anybody who could claim executive privilege, it would be Meadows, as opposed to Bannon. But we'll see. In the meantime, we have these little gems from the Trump media shop sometimes referred to in public as Fox News. Here is Liz Cheney, the despicable one, reading materials from former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. This is stuff that he provided to the committee before he decided I wasn't going to cooperate. And here are some of the frantic texts that come from the Fox News hosts, because they're thinking like, God, it's going to be so hard on us to try and pretend like this didn't happen. Remember, Laura Ingraham, hours after she sends this text, is claiming that these people are Antifa. Remember? Here it is.
Helpless. Dozens of texts, including from Trump administration officials, urged immediate action by the president. Quote, POTUS has to come out firmly and tell the protesters to dissipate. Someone is going to get killed. In another, Mark, he needs to stop this now. A third, in all caps, tell them to go home. A fourth, and I quote, POTUS needs to calm this shit down. Indeed, according to the records, multiple Fox News hosts knew the president needed to act immediately. They texted Mr. Meadows, and he has turned over those texts. Quote, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote. Please get him on TV.
How is that? Destroy your legacy when it's all Antifa.
Yeah, that's weird. And why would Antifa even listen to him?
Why would all of these secret Antifa people listen to Trump?
Laura, it's Antifa. If I tell them to stop, they're just going to do more.
It'll be worse. This is what they want, me to say stop so they can say no.
We're going to use I'm trying to do reverse psychology. That's why I told them to go to the Capitol.
Because I thought they would all go back to, like, storm Nancy Pelosi's office. Wait, no, they did. Oop. Go ahead.
Turned over those texts. Quote, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote.
Dear Laura.
Please get him on TV. Destroying everything you have accomplished, Brian Kilmeade texted. Quote, can he make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol, Sean Hannity urged. As the violence continued, one of the president's sons texted Mr. Meadows, quote, he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough, Donald Trump Jr. texted. Meadows responded, quote, I'm pushing it hard, I agree. Still, President Trump did not immediately act. Donald Trump Jr. texted again and again, urging action by the president. Quote, we need an Oval Office address. He has to lead now. It has gone too far and gotten out of hand, end quote. But hours passed without necessary action by the president.
Looks like Donald Trump Jr. Had a lot invested in this.
That angle is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
First of all, when Donald Trump
I'm revoking your first name.
Yeah, look, who are you again?
You're so weak.
Yeah, no. I'm going to watch how it goes. But if Donald Trump Jr. is your voice of reason as a country, you're in
big trouble.
Pretty big trouble.
This is like a it's like Succession, isn't it?
I think it's that, and how this took to this moment for anybody to say anything. When I hear that, I think that nobody stepped in until it had become a crisis already. And everyone knew Jan 6 was what was leading up to this, that somebody should have stepped in on January 2nd and had been doing something. And like all these guys doing something in the moment, like it's not that impressive to me.
Well, what's also interesting to me is, and we don't know, they haven't, I don't know that they've revealed everybody who was IMing Meadows at that moment. But it would be interesting. I suspect that there are multiple different routes to Trump. And one is through Mark Meadows, and that is where you see like the media people going through and the Sun. But I wonder how Bannon or Roger Stone or that crew got in touch with Trump.
That's like the Charlie Flynn stuff.
I mean, there's just no way that everybody's funneled through Mark Meadows. This guy's a dunce. There's people going around him. It's not like Kushner and, does anybody remember Ivanka?
Oh, right. Forgot about her.
Like her press people, Javanka's press people have done a very, very good job in making her disappear. Like to the point where it's like, she's going to show up and she's going to be calling herself Ivanka Kushner soon. And then they're just going to both refer to themselves as like his middle name or his mom's, maiden name. But that's pretty stunning. It shows you the panic that is associated with these media people whose job it is to carry water for these people.
I'm not going to be able to spin this, basically.
All right. We'll get back to this, but at the moment, we're going to do our special new, we have a new segment on this program. We don't have any special music for it, sadly. But why don't we just, it's this. It's our cracker and cheese segment. Huh? We got him? And our first guest on our new crackers and cheese segment is Hasan Piker. Hello, Hasan. Welcome. Congratulations.
What's going on? I just wanted to say hello from a fellow cracker. From one cracker to another.
We don't have any cheese today, but this is because we didn't do it. But so we do have the crackers. So, dude, you got banned from Twitch.
I sure did. I got a fat 7-day ban from Twitch for my usage of the horrific, racially charged, incendiary, and absolutely unacceptable term, cracker.
I think we're getting your computer audio, not your microphone.
Oh, hold on. Let me change it up real quick. Wow. See, I get banned and I forget how to stream. See that?
Incidentally, today is Crunchmaster Multi-Seed, the original. We don't get any type of promotional support from this at all. You're just
doing it for this because you guys get in the game. You just love the crackers. Wait, how does this sound now? Does it sound good?
That sounds great. Now, listen, I am of the mind that terms of service are the business of these private companies. But there seems to me to be a difference between the N-word and the C-word as...
Are we doing that? We're just going to say the C word?
I mean, we don't know which C word we're talking about because there's other words to say with the C word. And the reason why we don't know, really, is because there is not a long history of the use of the term crackers that has been associated with subjugating an entire segment of the population. Right? Like, words have a meaning that is invested in them by experience, words in and of themselves mean nothing. It really is like, some type of of established history. But what's your take on that?
Well, I have a lot of takes on that. As a matter of fact, part of the reason why I did get banned is because I would not stop with my takes on this issue. But I'll just say this. If you say the C word and there's like 8 other words that come to mind before cracker, then I'm pretty sure, even if it's a part of the, Webster's dictionary definition of slurs that target a race, it's probably not, bad enough that it's ban worthy, which was my point to begin with, because I think that it's capitulating to white fragility and white identity politics, which goes against solidarity and solidarity among classes. And I think that it's totally silly. And all of the people that freaked out on me on Reddit and on Twitter are now doing touchdown dances and also making fun of how silly this was. Like, oh man, I'm so glad we banned him for, we got him banned for saying the C word. It's just classic old Gamergate era 4chan style, politics from edgelords.
All right. So, give me your sense, like in terms of a term of service. Do you think like the N word should be allowed by Twitch or YouTube?
No, of course not. No, of course not. I believe that if a word is not associated with historical or contemporary systemic oppression and subjugation, then it's just a slur that isn't as powerful and therefore is not the same. Like, you can apply the blanket terminology of what a slur is, right, to it, and slur is a very powerful word in and of itself. So immediately when you're like, well, that's a slur, that's a racial slur, you're like, whoa, what the fuck? That's crazy. Technically it is. But given the loose definition of what white is, given the etymology of the word cracker itself, and just like you mentioned, how it's devoid of any sort of like tangible and legitimate oppression, both historically and even in contemporary society, it's the same as redneck, hillbilly, Karen, and numerous other kinds of targeted slurs, I guess, pejoratives.
This is sort of what my point is when I got fired from MSNBC for using the term rape in a satirical tweet that I did years before, and people were like, there was, and I felt like, no, MSNBC has the right to fire me if they want to fire me. It's their company. I thought it was wrong. People came to me and were like, well, how come you're not defending, Jeffrey Lord, who was a CNN guy at the time, who was, I don't know, making Nazi comments? And I'm like, because I don't think his comment was equivalent to mine. There can be a class of things that people can make a determination about, and there can be a difference within that class of language. It's not, I don't feel that people should be fired for language one way or another, or they should be banned for language one way or another. It's a function of the instance and the language in and of itself. And in this instance, there is a big difference between the N word and the cracker word, as it were, because you say, of the history and the meaning behind. That's what meaning of words means. It doesn't just mean what there's context to it. And, anybody who could read my tweet understood the context in that joke. I wasn't actually saying that I get to choose who rapes my daughter. I was making a satirical point about people trying to apologize essentially for a rapist. And there's context. And, I think Twitch has the ability and YouTube has the ability to decide what their terms of service are. But you can also sort of say, like, they're wrong on certain issues. And they're wrong in this case, as far as I can tell.
And by the way, for the record, I've long been an advocate for the Twitch terms of service. As a matter of fact, it's something that I believe is the reason why that platform is overall a lot better and a lot safer for content creators, even though there are hate raids and whatnot that goes on. And I've said this even though I've gotten, unfairly banned numerous times. Like, for example, when I showed like gore, they considered it to be gore because I was showing Michael Moore's like a Bowling for Columbine documentary when I was describing American imperialism and, all of the war crimes that America engaged in Latin American countries. So, despite the fact that I've been on the receiving end of many bans, some worthy, some understandable, Dan Crenshaw, some not so understandable, like the thing I just mentioned, or Cracker, I think that their rigorous application of the terms of service, in comparison to other platforms, of course, that's still not like perfect, very difficult job, is the reason why there's a lot less hate speech that goes on Twitch than other platforms and other comparable platforms, like even YouTube, as a matter of fact. YouTube is working on it too, don't get me wrong, but for the past 10 years when I was working at the Young Turks, and even now, my number one issue with YouTube has always been white supremacist radicalization on the platform and how much white supremacists and Nazis can literally use the platform itself. Twitch, not so much, because they do ban you, but they go too far. I do still prefer it though.
Yeah, and I think they can make these are situations where I think they could revisit and sort of get a better and more sophisticated understanding of what's going on. I mean, it's not like these are, it's not like bots, right? I mean, these are human beings making these decisions, and human brains have a certain nimbleness that an algorithm theoretically does not have. And a human brain can say the term cracker just does not mean and have the same implications as the N-word in this country, even though they are both, racial insults or slurs. And I would think that someone would have the nimbleness of mind to make that distinction. But I
agree. The problem is that there is a lot of outrage that you can almost mathematically create on the internet, right? This is the age-old argument. This is something that people on the internet that love doing debates, a lot of the people that call into your show and say, Sam, I don't know, I'm a libertarian, like those are the same dudes who, on the one hand, love arguing about being able to say the N-word as a white guy, and then on the other hand, love talking about white fragility and how white people are actually oppressed. And white people are oppressed, just not on the virtue of being white. There's no historical oppression or contemporary oppression attached to being white. That doesn't mean you're not oppressed if you're not, if you're gay, if you are, a member of the LGBT community, you can be marginalized in different ways as a white man, right? But, and most importantly and most significantly, in my opinion, on the virtue of your class, if you're poor, you were born into a poorer family, if you're destined to be a worker for the rest of your life, then yes, you are going to experience a fuckload of alienation, a fuckload of oppression. But that's not because you're white. And I stress that regularly, but that's a really difficult concept for people who have, who've grown up with liberal politics to comprehend. And unfortunately, oppressors and people who are in the dominant group regularly will use these sorts of liberal institutions and their liberal understandings of certain concepts to, get their way. They can say, cracker really offends me. I'm a white guy. And then actually get their way while simultaneously laughing about it and saying the N-word, even when they're, attacking people for saying the word cracker.
What is your overall perspective on this idea of, the deplatforming and that type of stuff, just generally? I'm curious as to that, because that has been like an ongoing debate that we've had on this program, I think, for years, the idea of like nationalizing these platforms. I mean, or in my opinion, we should be breaking up these tech monopolies so that the implications of getting deplatformed from any given one are not so huge.
So we're fully in agreement that destroying these tech monopolies is the best possible way to go. I hate the monopolization of every sector of the American economy. Shouts out to Ronald Reagan. But as far as deplatforming, I do think it's a very successful method of stopping harmful ideas from spreading. I understand that when we start talking about like who gets to make that decision, and that's terrible. Yeah, these platforms demonstrably make bad decisions on a regular basis on these issues. So I guess you're right. Breaking up these tech monopolies would at the very least like kind of divvy up that power a little bit, so you could go somewhere else, and you're not just like relegated to BitChute or something. Even though those are usually the Nazis and shit that go there. But no, deplatforming I think can be completely understandable, completely reasonable, and successful. Radicalization is a real thing. Stochastic terror is a real thing. These are real concepts. Is the FBI using like a loose terminology for it, or are they actually actively pursuing like some people that they declare white supremacists? Certainly. Will it ever turn into the post-Patriot Act world in which like how Muslims were targeted? Most likely not. Spencer Ackerman talks about this extensively in Reign of Terror. So I think deplatforming works, and it can be viable, and it can be appropriate. And most people, unless they have like a Noam Chomsky style approach, or I guess Glenn Greenwald can't really consider him to be principled anymore, but like a Noam Chomsky style approach, if you're a free speech absolutist, that's one thing. But the overwhelming majority of people understand that there are boundaries to free speech. There are boundaries to free speech in the sense that even in America, which has the most liberal free speech rules, right? There are still boundaries on what you can and can't say. And I think those boundaries are appropriate for society to function. And I think hate speech should be part of those boundaries. Absolutely.
And we should say, I mean, I think I don't know that. And maybe again with Chomsky it may be different, but the absolutists, when it comes to free speech, I don't think would be in favor. I mean, certainly not Glenn with his libertarian leanings would be happy with the government essentially regulating that these private corporations should allow for no terms of service. I mean, starts getting
that has never happened, and that will never happen.
Of course,
when you have no terms of service, you turn into Gab or you turn into Parler, which ironically still do have a terms of service, and also those platforms become hotbeds for pedophiles, Nazis, and in a lot of instances, pedophile Nazis. So that's and also liberals don't want to frequent those platforms. So even Republicans and conservatives that want to own the libs don't like going to those platforms anymore, because then there's no libs to own there.
Exactly.
Just a bunch of pedophile Nazis talking to one another about the white race. And that gets really boring after a while, right? You have to be really invested in racism to enjoy those platforms.
That shows how people are the problem with free speech, right? Like, no, that thing about like nobody wants to go to Gab because like it's all Nazis. Like no normal person would go there. Like we think about going there just for like the confrontation, maybe.
Right.
But like, yeah. They're not. They aren't compatible for free speech, no matter how much they cry about how much they're the real defenders of it, while they are happy when you get banned from Twitch, for instance.
Well, one of the problems is there is no innovation in the white supremacy sector these days. They are not coming up with new theories. It is just they just keep playing the hits over and over again. There's just
why fix it if it ain't broke, Sam?
Exactly. Well, all right. So I don't know. I mean, if there's, you're going to be back on Twitch in what, like a couple of days? How many days do they give you a timeout for?
7.
7 days. That's how long?
Which is like a lot longer than like most bans. It's like the second long. I mean, there's perma, there's a 30-day ban, and then there's a 7-day ban. But most bans are usually around like a 1-day or 3-day bans. You can appeal it, but I don't think they're gonna allow me to.
Yeah, a 3-day ban. I'm just curious as to like the cracker infringement, and of course, when I say cracker, I'm talking about crackers. But
of course,
crackers infringement. Where does that, like, what would you do to get a 2-day ban on Twitch, and what would you do to get a 30-day ban? I'm just curious as to where that falls in the spectrum.
Well, I can't say, because this is a part of the process that they basically keep a complete secret. I don't know who any of the moderators on that team specifically are. We never know. People at Twitch that work within the company, I think in some instances, don't even know. So it's like a group of people that, you know, are basically the gatekeepers, and usually they do a pretty good job. Like, don't get me wrong, I am understanding of what they have to do. I do think that the cracker discourse is a unique one, because it's one that you can very easily use against liberals, right? Especially, this is like BDS, right? Like, people love white supremacists and people who are engaging in white identity politics, whether they are white supremacists themselves or not, regularly utilize marginalized groups and their rhetoric effectively to dominate the conversation and to create oppression for themselves, to create a victimhood narrative for themselves. That's why you got the all lives matter to the Black Lives Matter. That's why, you know, you have the pro-lifers to the pro-choicers, right? Like, they're not saying we're pro forcing your pregnancy to term. They're saying they're pro-life. That's why you have Blue Lives Matter. So they're very effective at using liberal academic language in a cynical capacity to kind of win over liberals in the margins who may or may not have been, I don't know, captivated by, or at the very least, like, nurtured into believing certain white supremacist values growing up in a country like America. America is very racist, and all of our institutions churn out that information, whether it is white supremacists through omission, like not educating people on certain concepts, or overtly white supremacists by saying stuff like, you know, the Civil War was the war of northern aggression. You know, these are all very profoundly important ways in which people are educated to recognize white plight and white oppression as a unique struggle, whether they recognize it or not. And this impacts not just white people, but even Black people, even you know, Black and brown people that grow up within this education system are going to sympathize with some of these values because it's the dominant attitude.
I mean, I think to some extent that's what's going on with this, you know, anti-CRT in the classrooms thing. I mean, and it's starting to, it's an attempt to sort of, create this notion that white people are being victimized by both mischaracterizing critical race theory and lying about where it's being taught, for that matter. Frankly, I would like to see it in the, I think you could probably develop a program that would be appropriate for elementary school kids. It would be important. It's interesting, too. I think that there is what's fascinating is that you're starting to see now, coming out of this anti-CRT stuff, I think it was something in the American Conservative I read that was essentially trying to reestablish the Dunning School, which is the sort of prevalent historical interpretation of Reconstruction, trying to reassert that because they're now claiming that that it is wrong to reprint. I think Du Bois's Reconstruction, the book. They're complaining about this now. I mean, this is where it's traveling to, right? Like
it's always going to expand because it's never going to end with cracker. It's a ridiculous take regardless. It will, as long as you continue recognizing this as like a unique form of oppression, and that's very real, as long as you make, white identitarians feel valid about their plight, even if they are totally antagonizing and totally creating a false victimhood narrative deliberately and cynically, they will continue to make gains, and you see it. Like, that's how we got to Charlottesville. Like, you give them an inch and they take a mile. And ultimately, I suspect, like, calling someone a Nazi, for example, you could totally make the argument that this is a racially charged term. I mean, this is most of the time it's being used towards white people. It's, and I think it's oppressive. I wasn't a part of the, Nazi party in 1938. That's ridiculous that you're calling me, a white person, a Nazi. I think you should be banned for it. This is, there's the endless opportunity there.
And again, the issue is just sort of, context matters. The most weaponized I remember a cracker ever being used in my lifetime was on episodes of, I think, The Jeffersons, against the neighbors who would come by. But they were all actors, and it was a sitcom, and they were all paid, and it was just written in the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have never met, and I myself have been called cracker many times, going after like different fandoms. Shouts out to the Barbs out there if you're watching, Sam. I've been called a cracker many times, many times. Definitely more times than most of the people crying about being called a cracker on the internet. Doesn't matter. It's a ridiculous thing. It's not dehumanizing. It's not. It's not associated with any sort of like serious oppression.
All right. Well, I mean, I think, if we've covered all that, I'm curious on your perspective on some other things that are going on in the news today.
I mean, there's a segue there that we can engage in. Apparently, the libertarian brain, that Defense Project Veritas, doesn't actually end up defending a white guy getting banned for saying cracker. Glenn Greenwald came out with what goes around comes around take.
I've not seen the tweet where he is defending you against Twitch on this. Has he?
No, he did not. He said what goes around comes around.
That's all this has been setting up for, in my opinion, is coming when the eventual purge comes. That's what I think. I
mean, that's like the functional equivalent of cheering on, saying that unvaccinated should not go to the hospitals, right? I mean, like his whole brand has been an unwavering, principled stance, regardless of who the players are.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if Greenwald, but that principle was a bit shaky around the Nathan Robinson Guardian thing too, among some other those substackers, like taking a little bit of victory laps or look at a little bit gleeful at leftists getting banned.
Well, all right, let's.
Well, the thing about that is like Glenn is ridiculous in this issue because like. He knows for a fucking fact that I have been a massive advocate for, BDS protesters and how much of a disgusting erosion of the First Amendment laws that we supposedly have in this country. Whenever, you have to sign like that you have to sign like loyalty to the state of Israel and that you've never actually said Palestinians are human to be a fucking teacher in Texas. Like, I think that's insane. And that is a true restriction of freedom of speech.
I just want to be clear so that people understand what you're talking about. There are, I think, something like 20 states in the country, maybe there's more, where to get a contract from the state, whether you're a speech therapist helping kids in public school or whether you're, I don't know, supplying, toilet paper for the state house bathrooms, you need to sign a pledge to say that you will not engage in the constitutionally protected right to protest or boycott Israeli products. There are 20 some odd states that make you sign this. The Republicans tried to push this on a federal level. I think it was Marco Rubio a couple of years ago brought it up in the Senate. And yeah, it's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. And that is genuine First Amendment stuff because, of course, we're talking about the government. So I just wanted to, if people weren't aware of that.
Yeah, he basically said that, Glenn basically said, pro-censorship, liberals being pro-censorship will lead to this. And he basically said banning people for I'm reading his tweet. Banning people for using the term cracker is obviously demented and repressive, but the ultimate case for reaping and sowing. It is incredibly easy to predict, and many tried warning that banning people like Milo and Alex Jones would inevitably lead to this outcome. So this idea that people are getting banned for saying cracker was inevitably going to happen is a silly one, considering that platforms were incredibly strict on anything that goes outside of the liberal to reactionary neat little ideological box of conformity for a very long time. You never were able to, you would get clapped as a defender of Palestine regularly, even before Alex Jones and Milo was yeeted off the platform.
Hill. I mean, never
Yeah.
mind, but I mean, and we should say that 30 years ago, 25 years ago, he was about 30. Barry Crimmins was in front of Congress. The late Barry Crimmins was testifying about pedophiles on AOL when that was a platform, and they had chat rooms, and they were allowing child predators on there, and it got shut down. And you wouldn't hear any arguments at that time like this is a slippery slope. The fact of the matter is that people can make a difference between peddling, one type of stuff versus another. And those type of assessments are made all the time. And there's inevitably going to be mistakes, like I think Twitch made in your case. And that's part of the process. And that's part of like the way that these things develop. And the idea that they're all the same because you're deplatforming a person, and so it's necessarily all the same case, is childish. And it really is less, and I think it's indicative of just his response to you, frankly, it is less about a principled stance and more about like, this is just the methodology he's using to advocate for a certain ideology that he obscures. And I mean,
I wonder if he thinks McCarthyism is a product of, liberal identity politics as well. Maybe that's why it happened. Red Scare happened only because, the left wanted too much censorship.
Of course. I mean, he will use that. I mean, and it's been this is his methodology, and I think it's quite clear. And I will say this though, we're getting a lot of complaints about your fingernail polish, and I think it was very big of us to allow you on.
Thank you. Despite me being weird guy.
A lot of people in the office totally freaked out right now, and that was really funny. And I have to say also, I mean, I didn't actually think that we would go into this, but I guess we both could not help ourselves. The fact that he took offense that you were saying that he and Jimmy are old, and I will say this. Glenn is, as far as I know, probably about 6 months younger than I, and maybe less, maybe 4 or 5. I think he's maybe not quite hit 55 yet. We are old. I want to make that clear. We're old. 55 is old.
You're a fox, Sam. You know that.
Well, that may or may not be the case. And Glenn is a strapping, young looking fellow.
Young.
Not young, but old fellow as well. And Jimmy, but we're old. You're young. That's just a fact. And I think, it's important for us to sort of just accept it and it's not pejorative. It just happens to be that, like, when you get to be our age, certain things look like you're on our lawn, and it's upsetting to us. But that's,
it is like, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you start freaking out on someone because because like a straight male has like painted their nails a color, then that's boomer behavior. Boomerism is a mindset. And
those commercials, like the couple is in like the Home Depot or whatever, and the guy with blue hair, and he's like, you don't have to say anything about the blue hair, and the dad can't help himself. That's the same behavior.
It's pretty shocking. I mean, like, it's not, I gotta say, and I'm not a boomer. I don't think, Glenn couldn't be, because he is like 5 or 6 months younger than me. But, even boomers, we've had plenty of people in our generation, in Gen X, who wear nail polish. It just seems like, like a very odd thing to fixate on. But I guess that was what the reach is. Who do you think they're on? now. I mean, do you think
What's
they
up?
just like basically are in competition with Steven Crowder in terms of their audience?
I think that there's a lot of look. There's a big audience in independent media always that is constantly looking for reactionary content and people to tell them that they agree with them. It's I think even better if this is supposedly like a leftist person or a left adjacent person telling a reactionary person that they agree with them. Like everyone wants to be comforted for their points of view. So it's certainly uh, uh it's certainly a viable way to make money. I think it's an immoral way to do so, but that's probably what they're cashing in on. I mean, a lot of these guys, they get fat Substacks, decent amount of money. Um, I know Glenn loves talking about how much money I make whenever that comes up, but like I'm one person. Like we don't have a lot of incredibly successful leftist media operations that are independent,
We
we don't even have a lot of leftist media operations in general in comparison to how broad the spectrum of like reactionary content that is readily available on YouTube that is sometimes independent and other times actually backed by the very same institutions, entities, human beings that would back mainstream media outlets that churn that kind of misinformation.
It's pretty stunning what you're talking. I mean, like we will every now and then hear about somebody that we've never heard about. The last one was this guy, J.P. Sears. I just had a thing. Have you ever heard of J.P. Sears?
No.
He is a conservative, anti-vaccine comic who gets like 2 million views per video he puts out about this, with anti-vax conservative talking points.
Oh, I know. That dude looks hurt. Yo, that dude, oh my God. He looks like such a fucking, that dude is the archetypical Los Angeles failed actor who absolutely fucking was like, oh, there's a target rich environment of suckers here that'll like watch anything I say as long as they agree with me. And like, it's such bottom of the barrel commentary. It's just like liberals are so stupid. It's like what's that fucking SNL guy that was on with Dave Chappelle in that movie, Jim Brewer or whatever? Like it's his style of comedy where he's like, liberals are like this. And then everyone's like, yes, I agree with that. Thank you so much. It's just it's the reactionary version of Nanette, and it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point was that there's a ton of these guys out there. Now we here are swimming in drowning in Google money, as most people know, completely drowning in it. But for the most part, there's really a very limited number of people who do this on the left and can actually make a living at it. I was fortunate enough to come off of Air America, and I had an email list, and that was basically the only thing that basically saved me 10, 11 years ago. But for the most part, very difficult to build an audience on the left, whether it's whether it's you're talking about liberals or you're talking about progressives or socialists. It's tough. It happens, but it's tough. And on the right, there's just a lot more money, and there's a lot more, frankly, funding that comes from places like the Koch brothers. Maybe it gets laundered a couple of times through different organizations, but there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of lost leader attitude on the right that doesn't exist on the left, obviously, because
yeah, I don't know why someone who has been a beneficiary of wealth hoarding or the centralization of wealth would turn around and pay for someone to tell them like that's wrong. That entire system that allowed them to make billions of dollars and accumulate that kind of wealth that system needs to be dismantled. They're not going to do that. People who benefit from that are not going to turn around and pay for people to advocate against that.
Even on Air America, the big money was afraid of giving money to Air America and supporting it, investing in it, because the big money, the liberal, centered to the left money, is afraid of populism, because the populism on the left is economic populism. The folks like the Koch brothers, or the countless number of billionaires, frankly, that fund these things. Every day you hear about another person who's like $300 million for, to invest in some type of seed thing for online right-wing content. They're not afraid of the right-wing populism because it doesn't threaten their dollars at the end of the day.
They don't criticize venture capitalism.
No. And even when you look at like what, the critique that Glenn has of big tech, he will pay some lip service to the idea of dismembering it, but it really becomes which flavor of big tech is evil, right? Google is evil. PayPal's not necessarily evil. Facebook's not necessarily evil. I mean, even in what's also fascinating to me is like, I remember interviewing him about his book, about the Manichean style of the Bush administration. Good, evil, how childish he thought that was at the time. But now it's effective because it's really deployed as a way of building a brand and these subsidiary brands, whether it's Substack or Rumble or whatever, Callin or whatever it is. And instead of saying there's a structural problem here that needs to be dealt with, and this is the point. It's not that Google is evil or Facebook is evil. It is anything of this size, any enterprise of this size is bad for society. It's not like these specific individuals there are evil. Maybe they are, but that's irrelevant. It is the structure of these things that needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely. Just like the systemic problems will still persist. And there is a big difference that I always like to point to when we're looking at cultural hegemony, right? Bad behavior and like policing what you would consider to be like bad thoughts and bad attitudes in liberal media is something that a lot of liberals also like to engage in, rad libs. And I criticize that too, to a certain degree, when people are just like, why is there a bad character doing bad things in this movie? That's bullshit. They should always do, human beings should not be complex. They should be arbiters of morality and yada, yada. And I think that's a silly way. And I think that that's bad for art overall. And I don't like that. And I personally don't even think that like these cultural movements actually end up pushing for systemic change. I will admit that. Okay. They're the only time, however, though, that like any sort of cultural artifact, a movie, for example, like Birth of a Nation, can push for some kind of attitude shift is if the material realities already support that. America was already a deeply white supremacist nation. We already have a lot of white supremacist institutions, and then Birth of a Nation happens. That's how you start, that's how you start basically forming an active base for the Klan, right? That can't happen with the opposite. You can't combat material realities and material inequalities by making people watch a movie and then, feel a certain type of way. You can only do that if you are already in the dominant group and that your ideology is baked into all of the institutions and your attitude is reflected in like everyday lives, in our everyday lives, even if people don't recognize it's happening. So that's how nefarious it is.
You're saying that these cultural forces can be accelerants, but they cannot be, they can't flip, be catalysts and flip.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's true.
The revolutionary spark can only happen if there is a base of support within the material inequalities, and that there is like already organizing occurring alongside that. It can't do it on its own. No one's going to watch a movie and be like, all right, I'm fucking Marxist now. And like, and then enough people watch it and then they all become, Marxists. And then that's how you form the Vanguard Party. Like, that's not how it happens. It happens at workplaces. It happens through organizing.
And I think that limitation is true for the type of stuff that we do, frankly, as well. Like there has been, because, of the nature of, I think, the people who do this kind of stuff that we do, and the economic incentives to sort of inflate our influence in this sphere. I mean, I think you have a much bigger audience, obviously, than we do here. But even there, it is you can influence ideas, but I think ultimately there's no we're not catalysts for broad-based change. That has to happen with people in their real life relationships and interactions and workplace and their relationship to their own work. The idea that that people are like, we don't have a certain policy because these 5 YouTubers are not behind it is, I think, a little bit problematic in terms of people's understanding of how this stuff works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's funny to me whenever people greatly exaggerate like the influence that I have, even when they're like, oh, you're going to get the Democratic Party to not vote for Joe Biden if you keep criticizing him. And I'm like, if I could get people to vote a certain way, Bernie Sanders would be fucking the president. He would have won the primaries. Like, it's not, my influence is nothing in comparison to the trillions of dollars of earned media that mainstream media outlets can offer a particular candidate if they want to shift their weight towards them. I don't just mean paid media. I don't mean, I'm using the technical definition here. Earned media is when someone talks about your candidate, for those of you who don't know, in an organic capacity, like, oh yeah, look how crazy it is that Joe Biden won Super Tuesday. That's wild. Like, or leading up to Super Tuesday, talking about how great Joe Biden is. Like, that's earned media versus paid media would be buying ads. They work side by side, but earned media is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think the dynamic is very similar to what you were talking about, just, in terms of where the culture is. We can be accelerants, we can be the reinforcers, we can help a little bit, but it's not happening with any given or even a multitude of YouTubers. It's all just butterfly wings type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that like what we're doing is not significant. Don't get me wrong. I think you guys are doing a great job. And I think like trying to break away from the capitalist dogma or even like the center right liberal attitude that Americans have on most economic issues. I think that's really good. But it can't be done individually by YouTubers and Twitch streamers and podcasters. It has to be also accompanied with like on the ground organizing.
And stuff like Matt was just saying, defense against like stuff like Project Veritas. I mean, I think we're most effective when we're just talking about media narratives and where they start. I mean, that's the interesting thing I think about Twitter on some level too, is that much of what's happening on Twitter is really a function of influencing the sense of reporters who are on Twitter as to what's going on in the narrative. I mean, that's the sort of interesting dynamic. You're almost like taking advantage of the myopia that most human beings have, which is like, oh, I heard a lot on Twitter, it must be going on out there. And then you have people who actually have the ability to write like in the New York Times and have a sense of what's happening. That very often cuts the other way because it's all about, somebody at Kenyon College said you can't say this word, and so that's our biggest problem in this country, or something to that effect. But
yeah, I hate that. I absolutely hate it because it's like this idea that so many people who fancy themselves to be like white working class whisperers exclusively hyper focus on the exact same kind of culture war bullshit that like reactionary outlets focus on, like Fox News, and think that is the end all be all, when it's like a dude living in Western Pennsylvania, his life is not going to change if like a couple students who are maybe even a little heated, maybe a little over the top, and we're yelling at a professor. You know what I mean? Like it's not changing anybody's life. It's just simply a distraction. And they're doing it deliberately. They're distracting you from the main problems. They're distracting you from the reality that the Joe Biden administration hasn't done shit. But even Republicans aren't doing a better job of criticizing the Joe Biden administration. They're still hyper-focusing on made-up narratives like CRT and all this other shit. Why? Because if they were to hold Joe Biden to account, if they truly were economic populists like, Donald Trump presented himself to be, but he wasn't actually, right? They would be hammering Joe Biden on student loan debt relief. Where is it?
Of course.
Where's the student loan debt relief? They would be even talking more about how Joe Biden is currently utilizing Title 42 and trying to keep Title 42 in action to ensure that, asylum seekers who are legally and morally, by the way, seeking asylum within our borders, purging them from the country by using the Donald Trump era CDC restrictions and using this like COVID restrictions to purge them from the country without giving them their right to seek asylum. That's disgusting.
Same dynamic with Remain in Mexico. You had a court order that they needed to come to a deal with Mexico, but the idea that deals can be sewn up so quickly, it seems fascinating to me. I mean, I don't know. I will say this, and this actually raises something I was going to talk about today. I didn't got to yet, but there was the Biden administration. They just held one of the biggest sales for auctions for oil and gas drilling leases in the Gulf of Mexico's history. And I think it was in November. And it happened literally just days after COP26.
Because they listen to the scientists, Sam. That's how it works.
And at the time, the administration said that we were compelled to by a court ruling that was in favor of a bunch of Republican-led states that sued to lift the blanket pause that the administration had put on the drilling permits. But apparently, this according to The Guardian, the DOJ, just before the lease, acknowledged that the judgment does not force the government to auction off the drilling rights in the Gulf. I'm not going to, I don't need to read what the DOJ says. That was just what it said. Now, here's the question I have. I wonder, and I'm looking at this, there's also a big fight at the FDIC right now, which, long story short, there's a Republican Trump-appointed chair of the FDIC, and there's a majority on the board of Democrats. And they're having a big sort of like bureaucratic fight because the Democrats want to regulate the banks harder and want to prevent consolidation. There is the Biden administration that deserves
communism.
Deserves credit for not quite communism, but for antitrust. They're pretty good on it in terms of the administration, in terms of the personnel. That story has sort of broken out into the open because it's pretty high profile. I wonder when I see stuff like this, whether the Department of the Interior is still staffed by a lot of Trump appointed people who, when there's a court order, instead of dragging their feet, race to fulfill this thing before there's because this is a massive, our government has tens of thousands of people who come in with a new administration or they don't. And we're still a year out dealing with a lot of these agencies that are Trump staffed. And the Biden administration just doesn't have it's just a sheer, it's a difficult operation. I've been trying to get, frickin' pullover hoodies on our merch site for 7 months, and it takes me time to do it. I don't know the answer to this, but
Republicans want it more. And also not only that, but also they don't go against the material interest of their benefactors, their corporate benefactors and their wealthy benefactors. Like, that's the reality. Whereas Democrats
frictionless
campaign. Yeah, Democrats campaign on systemic problems that they are seeking to solve that are diametrically opposed to the material interests of their benefactors, which is precisely why they have to be the party of incompetence, whereas Republicans can be the party of viciousness and immorality, and openly engage in like racial agitative propaganda, white anxieties, use that as a really effective deflection away from the real problems that the American working class is facing. Whereas Democrats just look like incompetent fools that can only focus on, making sure your favorite TV show doesn't have any like hateful sentiment expressed in it, even if it's simply for parody. And I think that is just a really silly, self-defeating way of running, and let alone the reality that Democrats only run every 4 years or every 2 years when they remember that they need to win seats, versus Republicans are running all the time because they have to activate certain key bases within their movement and are consistently hammering on their narratives. Otherwise, how the hell are you going to get a bunch of random people to advocate for tort reform? You know what I mean? Or even school choice. Like these are ideas that they add on to other pre-existing movements that are organically growing, like QAnon. That's why when you see like a QAnon rally, you got like a Republican council member running for a fucking district in like Southern California, literally talking about school choice. But you're at a QAnon rally. And it's like, yeah, Democrats are pedophiles. Also, we should give more vouchers. We should allocate some of this communist public schooling system funds away from these, horrible communist teachers and give them to private schools, religious schools. It's like, well, you just bake that in there so perfectly. And they do this year round. They do this nonstop because they want it more. And also because that's what the benefactors want. And that's what the benefactors want, even if they're actually, giving money to the Democratic Party.
And I do think, there's just a lot less friction between school choice and QAnon than there is between, funding public schools more and wealthy benefactors. I mean, that's just the bottom line. There's just it's not as steep of a hill, I guess. All right, man. Well, listen, I guess enjoy your vacation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep making content. Like they're not gonna. It's really annoying because the ban is like really rigorous. Really, like you can't appear on anyone else's streams. You can't basically limits you from hanging out with your friends and your coworkers, which is understandable.
Are you not allowed to see family members?
No, I can see my family members. Yeah, my mom and dad are here right now. They're staying with me, but I'm still gonna keep trucking away.
Over when they heard about the ban?
No, they loved it. They were like, "Oh, great! Like then we will be able to go and vacation." I was like, "Absolutely not."
All right, well, hang in there. Thanks for coming on. It was good to.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you later. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Our first crack and cheese and crackers segment that we've had on this show.
Probably the last.
Maybe the last. I don't know. These are pretty tasty. Folks, that's all the time we have today. Do we have an update on Emma's COVID test?
Negative. She's negative. She's waiting to hear back on her friend, but
she's not coming back. All right. That's pretty convenient.
She timed that well.
I cannot wait until we get the call from Matt tomorrow. I think I better go get tested, but there's a huge line.
I'm not going to blow one of those days on a Wednesday. I got to do the stream on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, there you go. He shows up on his own show. Why?
Feeling better.
Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member. Join themajority.report.com. And listen, if you're in Boston and you want to see us live, majoritylive.com. We are going to Boston to celebrate the anniversary of January 16th. Holding it on January 16th. We call it the Big Live show that we're going to see. We'll be there in Boston. Larry Murphy, John Benjamin, both of Bob's Burgers. John Benjamin also of what's that show? Archer. Never seen it. Natalie Scher will be with us. We may have some more guests in Boston. January 16th, Sunday, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. at the Wilbur Theater. Go to Majority Live and check it out. We will all be there. Masked, vaxxed, at least for the audience. We will all take tests before we get onto that stage. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Oh, yeah. Last night I talked with Gregory from Oklahoma for about an hour and a half. About a lot about myself, honestly. So that will be out on the Green Corn Rebellion show. And then on Left Reckoning tomorrow, Wednesday, Liza Featherstone, we're talking about the crisis of masculinity and how we can address it in a way that's not really cringeworthy. So 8 Eastern, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get the post game.
I want to see that, Greg from Oklahoma. I want to hear more about you.
That's the place for it. Go into my high school and college and all that stuff.
And the Liza Featherstone thing sounds pretty awesome too, actually. Folks, we're going to head into our fun half, wherein we take your phone calls at 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. And we also, what we do is we take IMs. And the way you IM the show is you get the free app at majorityapp.com. And then you can IM the show, and then I read your IM. And that's what we do around these parts. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up. Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma is out with a COVID test, apparently negative, but it was a little bit of a COVID scare, so she's out. First IM, Sam's magic wand writes, I really wish you would use me more.
Is magic wand a massager?
What?
I think. Never mind. What do you understand magic wand to mean in that?
It's like a magic wand, like Harry Potter.
Fair enough. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that one then.
What did you think it was?
There's a personal massager that is used in sexual situations called the magic wand.
Maybe. I think it's pretty presumptuous to assume that I don't use that often. But with that said, Dayglow Lefty, Sam, you are killing me. I've spent the last 4 years trying to figure out how to connect with my 65-year-old mother-in-law and have recently figured out that she has some progressive leanings. This is particularly interesting because she grew up in a rural area in the Midwest where progressive ideas usually are not discussed around the dinner table. She also, unfortunately, is part of a generation of women conditioned to be seen and not heard. Hence, she hasn't had many opportunities to explore any inkling of progressive ideas. After getting her to open up about her progressive leanings, I was able to get her to listen to your show with me. Unfortunately, it was yesterday's show, where you incessantly went on about strap-ons, and now I can barely look at her in the eye. Fortunately, she has a sense of humor to go along with the progressive leanings. In short, congratulations on gaining a new listener, even if it came at the cost of my dignity. Oh well, maybe I'll try again in another 4 years. Keep up the good work, guys. Left is kink. I was referring to Crowder's strap-on holster that he wears.
Right.
Saltine crackers. Why can't we require businesses to let people have their phones on them and require tornado nuclear basements every X feet in warehouses? Hell, why don't we require that every X miles in cities all over? Also, there are weather stations like what you see in parks or sports fields that can predict loads of bad weather, including if the setup is right for a tornado to form. T-Watch. Basically, there are so many. We could.
I mean, there's a story from 2004 Chicago that a warehouse owner did do that, and it was a happy story about how this warehouse collapsed, but he had reinforced the bathrooms to be a storm shelter. That should just be mandated. We shouldn't be reliant on the foresight of a good warehouse owner.
When you hear people say regulations killing businesses, this is what they're talking about. They don't want OSHA to come in and say, you have 50 people working in this business, in this factory, you need to have reinforced, tornado areas in the event that there's a tornado. They don't want the National Labor Relations Board to say, like, well, you're protected if you, if there is you could have OSHA, I guess, or maybe it's probably OSHA, say, like, in the event that there's a tornado watch within 25 miles of your place of business, it's illegal for you to fire your employees if they leave. And that is exactly what we saw in Mayfield, Kentucky. 8 people died in that factory. And apparently there was a lot of people in the factory who were asking to leave. This is from NBC News. As the catastrophic tornado approached this city on Friday, that's Mayfield, employees of a candle factory at Mayfield Consumer Products, which would later be destroyed, heard the warning sirens and wanted to leave the building. But at least 5 workers said supervisors warned employees that if they would be fired if they left their shifts early. As word of the coming storm spread, as many as 15 workers beseeched managers to let them take shelter at their own homes, only to have their request rebuffed. 8 people died in that factory. Of course, they're saying, oh, that didn't happen. But what possible reason would the multiple employees of the factory claim this if it wasn't true? And understand, what the regulation would do in that instance is allow the workers to say, F you, I'm leaving because I'm protected. My job is protected. I'm going to have a legal basis in which to sue you, or I'm going to have some type of recourse. So when you hear people complain about regulations, there are some regulations that are stupid, without a doubt. There are some regulations that are licensing requirements that are actually propagated by the business themselves to keep people from entering. But the idea that regulations, generically speaking, are problematic is absurd. Any more than the idea of laws are bad is absurd. And this is why you want those type of regulations. We can require businesses to do this. It is just a question as a society, do we have the political will? Between the 101 and the 5, Ball and Cheney, to me, getting upset at the word cracker is essentially a reaction whenever our collective delusion and attempts to deny the atrocity of chattel slavery is confronted. Like psychologically, whenever someone's delusions of grandeur are confronted, they lash out, without a doubt. It is our inability as a society to come to grips with both our history of racism and its legacy, particularly structural.
The material inheritance of it.
Yes. It's our inability to come to grips with that as a society. Huge portions of our society lash out. Barry Mockner, Fox News, continuing to talk about Pine 11. Pine 11. That's the fire at the Christmas tree. Oh my God. That's so awesome. Pine 11 just shows how little the Republicans actually care about the issues facing Americans. How is 40% of the country so blind to this? So since Hasan got banned, does that mean someone had to complain about the use of the word cracker? I would love to see that complaint form. Yes, I would imagine there was a lot of people who did.
I think there's a lot of mass reporting of folks going on in the right-wing spaces these days, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hasan was a victim of that. I've seen other YouTube pages get caught up in that.
Wow. Chicken Shit Cedar writes, Bender looked up the cost of the Fox tree, and he said the Rockefeller Plaza tree cost under $90,000.
Yeah, we talked about that. It's very, like, how do you get to $1 million?
He wonders if Fox is running an insurance scam. Or if they're just lying about the cost of the tree on their TV shows.
They're lying about the cost, or they gave somebody a very good deal. Like, we'll pay you $500,000 on that tree. I want to know, like the sourcing on that.
James Murdoch has property upstate.
Yeah, exactly.
One ethical billionaire. What is your take on Twitch banning Hasan and his mods for using the term cracker? Well, I think we addressed that. It's always snowy in Ottawa. Can I get a shofar for my amazing girlfriend? She had her administrative law exam on Friday, health law exam tomorrow, competition law Thursday, and employment law exam and wrongful conviction paper next week. Never seen a human grind out so much work and still averaging only 2 panic attacks a day. If the Fox News Christmas tree was a fake tree, can we refer to it as the faux news tree? That's my shit lib joke cap for the month. Left is best. There you go. It's for your girlfriend. XYZ, XRYZ. My first 2 shots were Pfizer, but my booster I got was Moderna. That makes sense, I think, to me. Benny Boy from Iowa. Matt mentioned yesterday that he doesn't value contemporary art that's being traded for buku bucks. I understand feeling disgust at the commodification of various art forms in our culture, but I just want to suggest that you don't have to project that disgust on art itself. Keep the focus on capitalism and the way it treats artists like hokey jingle and trinket traders. Penny from New Mexico. Very excited about Shama winning against the recall. I supported her big time from afar. You mentioned yesterday that she's faced multiple recalls, but I'm not sure that's true. In her last election, she faced an opponent backed by $1.5 million from Bezos, pulled it out in a similar fashion. Maybe there's a Seattle listener who can confirm this. Wasn't there another one that she... Maybe we just got confused by how long that was going. 10 lawn gnomes. In response to the increase in petty theft, White House and progressive media should point out its prevalence compared to wage theft. Yes, of course. HR data clown. Donald Trump stopped student loan payments. Biden's reinstating him, reneging on the forgiveness promise. We mentioned that yesterday. Sam, I bet the Pine 11 arson was part of the insurance scam after Murdoch found out. Random info. I wonder if random info is the same person. Overall, Oliver Wendell Holmes slice. New rule. After 10 minutes of Sam versus a libertarian caller, the rest of the Majority Report crew gets to huddle up like umpires at a particularly lopsided Little League game and vote whether to invoke the mercy rule. Ben Shapiro's magical yarmulke. Just wanted to pop in and say I canceled my Amazon Prime membership, deleted Amazon apps, and instead I'm now funneling that money into an MR membership. Best decision I ever made. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Shep Smith, when he left Fox, they could have kept the same suits and set and called it a wolf in Shep's clothing. Left his best. Okay. Sparkly winning socialist. Talk about the banality of evil. Imagine botching your coup attempt because you couldn't follow a poorly made PowerPoint. Crab and salt pepper. Love how Trump Jr. felt more comfortable going through Meadows than talking directly to his literal father. Zephi. Other aspects of the Meadows text to me is that it demonstrates the power of the media machine on the right. There was an article in the Washington Post or Times that it was about what Dems need to do to win, quoting people like Teresa Scopel, saying Dems are too woke. While this is seemingly at odds with who is actually in power, what they ran on and what they're actually doing. Yet not once in the piece was the ability of media to shape narratives regardless of that reality. The right has a powerful, unified messaging apparatus from top to bottom. Can you imagine? Any instance where Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, and Chris Hayes are texting Ron Klain, you got to do something about this? I mean, honestly, never.
Hunter Biden.
Never.
Come on, Dad.
Never. Wyoming Ryan, super sad that Don Jr. can't call Daddy directly. Fierce Diddy, pretty hilarious that Don Jr. was texting Mark Meadows.
It's crazy. It really is funny.
Dr. Gurus, those texts to Meadows remind me a lot of the Ethan Don't Do It text sent by that one. Yeah, former teacher. Hasan Majority Report, the best crossover since Marvel Cinematic Universe. Goopek, cracker ass cracker. Ben 6, stop streaming on Twitch if he's on to keep yourself safe. Vaush was also banned for talking about Hassan's banning using the term cracker. Apivna, I see the framing everywhere, but can what we're experiencing really be described as inflation? Were it so, we should see everything in CPI increase at the same rate, right? It seems much of what we're experiencing is being driven by energy prices. Isn't it the case that every item in the basket's gone up at I think, look, it's inflation, but I think the key is that not every inflation is the same. And you don't necessarily need everything in the basket to go up. Although one would expect it if there was something, if it was something that was not so narrow. I think we're going to see fuel prices already starting to drop. I think we're going to see other prices largely starting to drop. For some reason, the Biden administration took this opportunity to increase tariffs on Canadian lumber. Probably a mistake. My understanding is like 1/4 of our lumber comes from Canada. They may be doing it to protect U.S. lumber interests because maybe they're having trouble moving it around the country. And that suggests to me that at least in the context of lumber, what you're looking at is like a labor shortage or some type of, logistical problem, because there wouldn't be such adamance of needing that protection. Maybe that's a way of just maintaining prices. Maybe the supply chain is in better shape in Canada, probably because maybe their truckers are treated better. I don't know. It's all conjecture on my part. But oil prices are going to go down. They seem to be going down a little bit. And you're already seeing like the chip manufacturers coming back online. My understanding is that two major car companies, I can't remember which one it was, Toyota and Ford, I'm not sure, are now back up to capacity. So I think anyways, we're gonna see that we've seen the peak of this. Some things are gonna still stay high, but what has been inflated, it seems to me, is the news media. I mean, one would expect, right? If you have a year-long shutdown of stuff, nobody's going to carry these nobody's going to carry the expense of carrying these products. Never mind the fact that you have a lot of shutdowns in China, you have a lot of the shipping container problems, you have a lot of the trucker problems, you have a lot of logistic problems. Nobody's going to carry this stuff. And, the idea that we're 6% year over year from where we were last year, well, people weren't buying stuff. We'll see. Sam's F-150. Don Jr. had to take, I know. Our tax, the stream is down on Twitch.
It's back up.
Is it? Okay. Love the Hasan parents. Would love if this was a regular thing. The problem is he streams for like 12 hours a day. Eric the Bed Humper. I was reading White Trash, the 400-year untold history of class in America by Nancy Eisenberg, and according to Nancy, the word cracker was originally a classist derogatory word against poor whites like clay eaters. Of course, words change over time, but I guess that was the original meaning to it. Keehalas 31. Did you just get banned too? No, I don't think we did.
No, we took it down for
okay.
Yeah.
Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Those crackers look around and sound pretty salty, Sam. I'm of course referring to those delicious treats. Just want to make that clear. Randy for the left. Just want to commend Sam for finally allowing his son Hasan to come on the show. Emma Buddhist Ark. Finally, white people get a W. Sam Strap-on. A person from Georgia is a cracker. It's short for a peanut cracker, like a corn husker. The Atlanta baseball team from 1901 to 1965 was the Atlanta Crackers. Is that true?
They should go back to that.
Is that true?
I haven't heard that, but...
Will you look that up?
The Atlanta Crackers?
Minor league baseball team. Love this morning's interview. Really putting on the Ritz for the viewers. Also, I would say the Crackers more akin to Fat Cat, Big Wig, or even Oligarch, if you ask Jason Johnson.
Yeah, Crackers were a minor league baseball team.
Interesting. Nick from Philadelphia. It's nice to see how many businesses advertise. Well, at the very least, that tells you that historically, this has not been a term that subjugated people. If it was a baseball team's name, presumably played by white people. Now, if this was in the Indigenous Peoples League,
right, like they used it as like Redskins,
or the African American League, and this was their way of basically trying to, then that would be pretty funny. Yeah. But I have a feeling that's not the case. Can you confirm that for me? Because I don't want to speak out of turn here.
Yeah, the Atlanta Crackers were, not a Negro League team.
Okay, just checking on that.
Like they played in the Dixie series, so.
That's unbelievable. I wonder if there's any shirts. I mean, if they played in 65, I bet you somebody has a shirt still. That would be awesome. Nick from Philadelphia. It's nice to see how many businesses advertise here geared towards small businesses. The type of people who watch Majority Report are definitely the people I want to be starting the next generation of businesses, co-ops, nonprofits. Glad to know we're confronting the corruption of our society head on and changing it rather than shirking our responsibilities and hiding in abstract idealism. All right. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but Transistor Rodeo. I'm pretty sure the term cracker was referring to the crack of the whip when they were beating the slaves. How is that a racial slur when it defines an action, not a color descriptive?
Like we have a lot of origin stories for the term.
But again,
it doesn't matter.
The bottom line is it doesn't matter. I mean, I think like the etymology of the word is important insofar as it shows that it was utilized as a tool to continue to oppress a group of people who were systemically and historically oppressed. That is what if you're looking for a limiting principle, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, like the term Negro and the N-word developed because we needed to start like defining these people as a subjugated class. Literally needed to other them and couldn't call them others. And we couldn't call them non-Christians either because we taught the Bible to some of them, so that wouldn't work.
I mean, this is not, I mean, it is, look, my pedigree, to the extent that I have one, is in comedy and is, Lenny Bruce was as important a figure in my comedy development as any comedian. And he's got an amazing bit about the N-word that he did in the 60s. And where he basically said, we can diminish the meaning, the historical meaning of the word by reappropriating it. And the bit was something to the effect of like, if Kennedy came out and said, I want you to meet my N-word Secretary of State, my N-word, et cetera, that the term can be reappropriated and we can demolish its meaning in society. I think there is truth to that idea, but I don't think, that white people are in a position to be able to do that. And my thoughts of this have changed over the years. And even if I'm somewhat convinced that white people could be in a position to do that, it would involve much more material stuff than just repeating the word over and over again.
Like naming them to commanding positions in the economy, for instance.
And frankly, it would involve like sort of reckoning with like, reparations and sort of a real genuine assessment of that stuff, because it is not just a semantic issue. And, there was a time where I would use the word and I would on air. And I would, I was careful in the way that I deployed it, and I was very specific in the way that I used it, and would talk about with listeners about the use of it and why I thought it was okay. And on some level, generically speaking, I do think that there is some value to that reappropriation argument. But it's also like, I also accept the fact that maybe there's a lot of people out there for whom it is really, really offensive. And there's not a commensurate value in my use of it to justify it.
And it's also trying to address problems of material allocation and that sort of stuff with a cultural sort of bandage, right?
Right. The issue with the word is not the actual letters, right? It's not the N, it's not the I, et cetera, et cetera. It is that this word was associated with real material oppression. And unless you really address the material oppression, it is impossible, in my mind, to ultimately reappropriate the word. And unless everybody in the community decided that that's what they wanted to do, the people who are, sort of have traditionally been oppressed by that word. Like, I think, queer was a word that was reappropriated successfully. And I think also, to a certain extent, also came with a recognition in society that gay people had rights. It's not a coincidence.
And I'd say like the T slur, as they call it, like probably the Reclamation Project for that didn't work quite as well because we still have a lot to deal with regards to trans individuals.
Yeah. Leach. Hasan sucks. Maybe he should have used his $2.5 million to start a better streaming platform service. Own that is creator owned, shows him instead of just enriching himself and buying a mansion, now claim he's a victim. Bear at home too. What am I missing? Didn't Hasan use a racial slur in a derogatory way? He wasn't using the term in a discussion of the word itself. Well, I think what you're missing is the implications of that term. I mean, look, your mileage may vary on this.
But this is a desire for like a literalist description of what a quote slur is that looks at form and not content at all. Content meaning, like, of course, as we're talking about the history of American racism.
I mean, if we were to deploy the French word for cracker, for instance, would that be a problem? Were we just trying to skirt around it? Like, where in our history has the word cracker been a tool in which to oppress white people? That's the point. The point isn't, again, that the word itself, the shape that your mouth makes for any word that is just like, beyond the pale. The idea is that it is perpetuating a systemic oppression in some manner.
Yeah, and if and some of the origins of cracker, like, it would be more of a class slur in that case than an ethnic slur. You're right. If you say it's the poor whites that you're using cracker for, well, it's not really the white thing; it's the class thing that I would emphasize, and that's not something I think needs quite the protection. I mean, I think it's some you take offense to, but it's not like the N-word again.
J-Man Raps. Hey guys, I'm jacked for Raptors Nets tonight, more than any weak sauce Brooklyn fan. Nomiki, your last Femme Friday was great. I was laughing even uncomfortably at the vasectomy discussion. Nomi not here today, obviously. It was just one of those days. This is what happens when I don't time out my laundry properly and am not wearing a solid shirt. This is the first check shirt I've worn in 2 years probably. And I do that, and then everybody leaves. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, kudos for tackling the word cracker and how hateful it is in your community. I've said it before, but you're a credit to your people. All jokes aside, have you thought about having Randall Kennedy on again? I know you had him on years ago, but in addition to his book on the N-word, he has a new book out called Say It Loud, where he criticizes critical race theory from the left. Did an interview with Nathan J. Robinson on it, but it went over my head, and I think he'd do a great job. Oh, you put him down. Didn't he? Did Kennedy write the book about Obama, right? The Color Line? Is that what it was called? What was the name of that book? What was Randall Kennedy's book from like 20...
Yeah, the persistence of the color line, racial politics in the Obama presidency.
Angel, people I know regarding white oppression would argue that they grew up as the only white person in a black neighborhood or school, and that negates any privilege because they were the minority and got beat up and bullied. I think as an individual, but the advantage they had is that when they moved out of that neighborhood,
they were victims of bigotry, not racism, is I think the short answer to that. Like, it's not a structural thing, it's, you know, interpersonal bigotry. And yeah, like, and I think in the context of a segregated country like America, it's, yeah, unfortunate that stuff like that will happen, but it's not racism as like a structural oppression of folks.
Anti-socialist, 2-day ban on Twitch for saying oyster crackers, 1-day ban on Twitch for saying Triscuits. Attorney Andrew, love that libertarians come up with extremely convoluted thought experiments that serve the sole purpose of circling back to a definitional debate. It's like if the "but this one goes to 11" scene from Spinal Tap became an insufferable philosophy undergrad. That's pretty funny. Calling from a 954 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I made it on. Hey, this is Danny from Culver City, California.
Danny from Culver City. Who are you talking to?
My wife. We've been trying to get on for a few weeks now.
All right. Well, congratulations
calling
to
as
both
much as possible.
You and your wife.
So, yeah, my wife, Sarah. Yeah, I wanted to talk about, well, have you guys heard of Daniel Baker?
No.
Are you familiar with him at all? Okay, so he's kind of a relative of mine, and he
cousin
was,
Danny.
Sorry,
cousin Danny. I'm joking. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So he was a military guy, and he was actually fighting with the YPG in Syria for a while.
This is okay.
And excuse me.
Yep. Go ahead.
And he, if you remember, during the January 6th revolt, and they were saying that there was people were going to do like storm all the state capitals.
Yeah.
He was Yeah. So he was basically saying online that we should like go out and stop everybody. You know, like. Sorry, I'm like really nervous right now.
No, you're doing fine. So wait a second, just so it can catch people up. He did. Now, did he fight in Rojava, or was he just supportive of?
Did he what now? Say that again.
You're saying that he was he was supportive of the Kurds in Syria, right?
Yeah, he was literally fighting there. In fact, he was in the there was a Vice documentary. I don't know if you may have come across it, but yeah, he was actually in that, and he did fight with them.
Okay.
So my point is that he was just like, he was a guy on the left, right? And when everybody was when the right was talking about how they were going to storm all the state capitals, he was saying like, we should go out there in force and stop them, right? So basically the point of the story is when he did that, the feds arrested him.
Holy shit. I'm looking at the Intercept article now. Will you put this up? Natasha Leonard wrote a piece about him in October. He was sentenced to 44 months in federal prison for his social media post that called for armed defense against possible far-right attacks on the state's capital.
Yeah. Yeah. So now compare this to like somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse, who like basically actually did the same thing, but went out and actually killed 2 people. Now, Daniel was arrested. The day never even came. All he did was say that we should do this. And they put him in prison for 44 months. And I wanted to like quickly, this is from the Justice Department website. This is a quote from the acting U.S. Attorney General. Acting U.S. Attorney on the case. They said that the free exercise of speech is central to our democracy. However, the defendant's threats of armed violence to inhibit expression of political views different than his own are both unlawful and dangerous. And today's sentence acknowledges the defendant's threats to incite violence and should serve as a significant deterrent to those who would solicit others to join them in conducting criminal acts rather than engage in lawful debate. And I just find that so cynical in comparison to the way that they treated somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse, or just in general, like the way that the state or like power structures will enforce, these sort of norms on the left versus how they treat them on the right. And I just we've been trying to get through for so long because we wanted to just bring this up and make sure that people knew about it, because I just think it's really I don't know, it's personal to me, and it's also just it's sick. I don't know. It's like a sick joke.
It's sick. And apparently at his sentence hearing, I'm reading from the article now, U.S. District Judge Alan Windsor, a Trump nominee, whose appointment was vehemently opposed by a coalition of over 200 civil and human rights groups, said that Baker had intended to commit acts of violence like he went to Rojava to do.
Right. Right. But he didn't even nothing even.
He didn't leave his apartment.
Yeah, he didn't do anything. The day never even happened. It was just sort of almost I guess they were saying that it was like a transmission of a threat or something. But if that's the threshold, how often do people like the Proud Boys or whatever, go out and say that they're going to go beat people up on the street or whatever,
It's nuts.
What's the difference here? What is the principle that we're applying? And he's in jail, he's in jail for real right now, and he's not going to get anything for it. And by contrast, Kyle Rittenhouse gets this whole media tour, and he's going to be a celebrity and, probably end up, getting some high paying jobs someplace. What is there's no comparison in how these things, and even with Hasan and getting banned, it's I think Emma posted about this earlier. It's too bad that she's not here today, but something about how they're trying to manufacture this center between what is, the left does something calls somebody cracker, and we're going to crack down on that because that's somehow equivalent to, the right, spewing white nationalist propaganda or whatever, and that somehow these things are equivalent and have to be enforced equally.
I mean, this, in and of itself, this is a really stunning story, but it also puts, it shows the fallacy of look, if you do this, it's going to come around and come to the left. It's already been here. This is already the dynamic.
That's just trying to set the table so you can blame the left when they continue to do it. Exactly.
This is already the pre-existing dynamic. We had, the Bush administration was sending the FBI out to surveil vegan protesters in front of a ham place in Georgia, I think, 15 years ago. I mean, this has been ongoing, and the idea that there is any calls for some form of parody or any calls for, will bring about, are obscure, the blowback obscures this stuff. I mean, I don't, without having a sense of what your cousin was posting online. I mean, this just seems unbelievable. His sentence was for 4.5 years.
44 months. Yeah.
3.5 years.
3.5, something like that. But
and he had been held for 8 months, it says.
Right, and I would encourage you to just kind of New York Times did a story about it. Yeah, like you said, The Intercept. I mean, I guess the difference is that because he actually had fought in Syria, they considered him a little bit more serious in his threat or whatever. But
how does that? I mean, how does that come into the? I mean,
got to be vets making threats.
I was going to say a lot of these people who've been talking about this stuff are I mean, it's just, I don't know how you can justify what Rittenhouse did, who ended up killing 2 people.
How can you even be silent about the Baker thing if you have been all over the Rittenhouse thing as a triumph of justice or whatever?
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about any kind of civil libertarian that would be so keen to be seen in the Rittenhouse beat and have nothing to say about this.
Yeah, and this was all wrapped up in, like, you know, after the January 6th thing, I think that they were just, like, desperate to, like, find somebody and say that they were, like, not going to let this happen again.
Right.
And he was sort of, like, just the closest thing that they could come up with, you know, to having any sort of legitimate threat. And I just, like...
They used him as a way of, I mean, I think that's frankly what happened to Hasan. And,
yeah,
I mean, I think, you know, it's the law enforcement does this all the time. Like, I'm convinced, like, Comey came out with that letter about Clinton because he thought that he was going to arrest Trump. I mean, there's this sort of notion of we need to maintain some, there's this desire for, like, you know, just sort of balance for the sake of balance. Even if it means that we're not actually, we've got to put our thumb on the scale a little bit on one side or the other, just to make it look like we're fair arbiters.
Yeah, totally. And the attorney went on to say that, quote, this case proves that the FBI will not tolerate those who seek to wreak havoc in our communities. And violence designed to intimidate citizens and influence government is what the FBI's counterterrorism team was designed to combat. It's just, yeah, I don't know, just so cynical and so, like, it's almost like just obviously misapplied in different cases. Yeah, and like I said, he's going to have nothing for it. You know, he was already, like, he was homeless for a little while. Like, he's not, you know.
He's not going to cash in on this. Like, right.
No, he's definitely not going to cash in on. Yeah, there's no left, you know,
should we have him on and ask him that can just, like, what kind of women he's into?
Yeah, right? Oh, my God. It's pathetic, yeah. But,
well, keep us updated and email us, you know, if there's any developments. But, you know, I mean, we'll try and talk more about this story. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for taking my call. And sorry, I kind of spaced a little bit. You caught me totally off guard. I've been on hold, like, just mindlessly for so long. I almost forgot I was even on the phone. So
well,
it's like, oh my God, I can't
appreciate your calling
I'm on the show.
And if you or other people have stories like this, try and email us too. And you know, we don't respond to many emails, but we read, you know, we try and read all of them. And so, you know, I appreciate your patience and you getting in touch with us about it. That's crazy. It's a crazy
Absolutely.
Story.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it so much. Okay.
Sounds like a good candidate for a pardon, I think.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to be there. I don't know that you can, but I guess this is a federal, it must be a federal case, right? Of course. It's a Trump, that's unbelievable. I wonder if this was a U.S. attorney, too, who was a Trump appointee. We got to look into that more. I mean, that's the thing, is that there's this assumption that, like, you know, the day that Joe Biden is inaugurated, that the apparatus of a government that has been built up over 4 years just goes away, and it doesn't. I mean, I want to be clear that I am not, you know, defending the Biden administration when it comes to things like these leases, or defending the Biden administration when it comes to these things like those negotiations for the Remain in Mexico. And I certainly have no information to this effect. But I've talked to people, both on and off the show, who work in these agencies. And these agencies are decimated under at least the last two Republican presidencies, because that's what they do. And they're also just staffed up with a lot of Republicans who have a specific agenda that is different from what the administration is. And it is not easy to necessarily control them. You can't even necessarily fire them. And you want to slow walk something, but there are certain key people in the agency who are like, we're not slow walking it. We've got this legal authority, and we're just going to run with it. And there's nothing the administration can do. I don't know that that's the case, but I think it's something that, like, if you really want to, you've got to contemplate.
Well, it's like, and what's their appetite going to be to chase down all that stuff? Is like they'll often just let it ride because they're not as concerned about it as we are.
Yeah, but I'm also not even sure that it's appetite as much as it is like, how big is your stomach? I mean, it's just anybody who's worked in any type of enterprise understands that it's like, yes, okay, you do prioritize stuff, obviously. You have to. But that's how you prioritize, and what gets done is also a function of the capacity. And I'm not making excuses here. I don't know that that's the case with this at all. In fact, I'd be curious if, like, this feels like, somebody at the American Prospect should be writing about this stuff. But interesting. District Jabroni, Daniel's case is more relevant to the January 6th plotters. They said to take the Capitol, and then it actually happened. And there were zero consequences rather than the 4 years of jail time. It's also not paving the way to arrest people defending, for example, the Capitol. When the next right-wing coup attempt happens, the fascists get to invade whatever they want. But if you try and stop them, then you're the criminal. Meaden, thank you for having Hank Pecker on. Next time, ask him about Cussy. Left is best. That's right. I don't follow any of that. Eat the Rich. Robert Evans just put out a podcast series covering January 6th called Assault on America. He covers Daniel Baker and the discrepancy between the policing the right and left. It's a real serious problem. Let's go for, Jesus, it's already 2:30? What the frick? We got all this stuff to do. What's tomorrow? Wednesday. We'll have time. Is any of this stuff like time sensitive? I don't think so, right? All right. We'll do this and we'll get more clips. We got a guest tomorrow, though, don't we? Oh, boy, oh, boy. All right, one more phone call. Sorry, folks. Sorry, we don't have more time for this. Calling from a 413 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, my goodness. Is this me?
It is you. So many people call in. And their name is this me?
Well, I don't use my name because I come from a small town and I have a very unique name, but I'm going to go by Western Mass Girl.
Western Mass Girl. Okay, good enough.
Gosh, I always listen to the people say, sorry, I'm nervous. And I'm like, oh, how endearing. I hope that's not me, though, and that's me.
Well, it's very endearing.
So I wanted to call about two things. One is tiny and just a ha-ha, but the main one is everyone's talking about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and chlorine dioxide. I don't know if people are aware how serious people on the right are taking it. My dad is he's brewing concoctions of this with his friends and taking it as preventative care. And at first I was like, okay, with your hydroxychloroquine thing is boiling banana peels and weird stuff. And I was like, whatever, sure. But now he's literally got this creepy website list of how to brew chlorine dioxide. Sorry, I'm so nervous I'm saying the words wrong. And it's depressing. Like, I don't have a close relationship with my family, and I finally have a chance to have a relationship with my dad, and he's poisoning himself because that's what the right is telling him to do.
God.
And I don't know how, if like a lot of other people are dealing with this on their side of the family that is on the right, or if people are just hearing it as hype words. But it's not just words. Like, people are believing it and putting it into their systems. And he's like going to be 72 next month. It's wild. He doesn't even have COVID or any signs of it to be like, oh, I'll take these preventative measures for this reason. Not that that's even excusable.
Right.
But it's mind blowing.
Is he vaccinated?
No. I am the only progressive type person in my family.
Well,
Everyone else is like so down the rabbit hole.
How just warped is our country that the response to is he vaccinated is no, he's not progressive. It should just be, I don't know what you do in that situation.
Right, and I just wanted to bring it out there so that people knew it's wild. Like, it's not just a ridiculous talking point they're saying, and like, what are the outcomes? Are people actually believing this? No, people are actually believing this, and it's just, I don't know what to do, because no matter what I say to like educate him or challenge him on it, he doesn't believe me because he believes I'm brainwashed. And when I ask him for his proof, everything he sends me has been taken off the internet, and in his eyes, that's more proof that it's accurate. And there's no talking to a person at that point. And it's depressing, it's sad, it's frustrating, and it's scary, because I hope not the world, but our country doesn't have as many people doing that follow.
We are not yet in the fourth wave. It's gonna hit here shortly, I think, when Omicron starts to really gain some steam, and hopefully it is less virulent, significantly less virulent, to maybe make up or mitigate how much more transmissible it is. But I don't know. I don't know. That's, I'm sorry. That must be very difficult. I don't even imagine how you would deal with that, frankly.
Yeah. On a happier note, I'm just glad I got to put that out there. I want to tell you that you haven't mentioned Survivor in a while, but I've watched the whole season my whole life since I was 7, and I love when you pepper in your little thoughts on that. And if you're ever just bored, or we hit another lockdown and you're like, gee, I just want to do a podcast about Survivor, let me tell you, Sam, I would listen to that hardcore.
I appreciate that. That is terrifying that you've been watching it since you were 7.
No, it's not.
No, it's terrifying because I know what age I was when I started listening to it, and I am old.
Well,
appreciate
it's a joke show.
Well, all right. I'll consider the Survivor podcast, but I feel like there must be already a couple out there. There's got to be hundreds.
Nah. Well, I want yours.
All right. Well, we'll consider it.
Thank you guys for all you do. Been a big fan for years now.
Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
She did a good job. She was nervous. Did a good job. Folks, that is it for the call-in portion of our program because we just didn't have any more time today. I apologize. When we started, I was like, oh, we're going to have to take calls early. I feel like that happens all the time. All right. 10 IMs, and then we're out of here. Comrade Cracker. Solidarity with my favorite crackers. Please don't use the hard R. Margot from Mass. If anything, cracker's more offensive to descendants of enslaved people based on its history than to white people. Any history book recommendations as a gift for someone that won't be perceived as a political education, even though it kind of is? I mean, Phoner's Reconstruction? I mean, that's a good way to sort of just like, I think that's a good one.
It's one everyone should read anyway.
Sam Stapon, Spam Sear Herb. Did you know that George Jefferson also called that cracked neighbor of his honky? Good show. Yep, I do remember that. Mark Monkey. The silliest thing about this cracker discourse is that a white guy who grew up in a very mixed community in a majority black city, I never once felt threatened by any anti-white statements, even when I was getting beat up in elementary school. The N-word and other slurs, and normalizing tolerating them, is a threat to marginalized people. There is no place that is unsafe for white people in the same way. But you can't say the same of marginalized people. Twitch is unsafe for marginalized people, which is why a lot have left. And banning cracker doesn't do anything but reinforce why it's unsafe for them. Yep, that's a good point. Richard Warts. Oh, God. The Atlanta Black Crackers was the Negro League team. Not joking. What? That's amazing.
Hasan should get off on that alone.
I was going to say, like, the best part of this is, like, learning this.
That's true. Atlanta Black Crackers.
That's crazy. Maddie Light, my daughter caught COVID at school last week. My parents are now showing symptom signs. COVID should be taken seriously. It seems like her school didn't even let people know when she most likely caught it from school. Ay, sorry. It's going to be a tough winter, I have a feeling. Where are we? Like 7 more? Squeeze of lemons. Can I get a chauffeur for turning 29? I don't feel any different, but I'm sure that will change with the next one. It's a chauffeur, not a chauffeur. S-H-O-F-A-R. My border collie named Sam. The C on the one Atlanta Crackers jersey looks like a whip. Oh, wow. That's probably what it was. Holy crap. That's even more effed up. Champagne commie. It's like literally like, I'm sorry, it's offensive to white people to call them massa or plantation owner. Champagne commie. Sam, you said yesterday Cold Feet Crowder was wearing a strap on, but I believe the cool and hip term is the strappy wappy. Hope this helps. Stay young, King. Where's Emma? Emma didn't think I understood what it was. H-Dub. I think you're discounting the humiliation Gene Wilder felt when Richard Pryor called him a cracker in Silver Streak. There's a blonde lady who took a private jet to January 6th and went to the Capitol. She's getting a reality show, a documentary, and 2 months in jail. Is that right? Is that true? The real estate agent from like Texas or something? Eat the rich. Oh, I just read that. Skippy. What the F? Mark Maron. Oh, well, what the F with Mark Maron came out of Air America too. I know. Mark Maron and I did Break Room Live together. Go back and listen to the first like 10 episodes of WTF. I think I'm on a couple of those. Are you new to the show? They also asked, would you ever wear a strap-on holster? I would imagine. Sebastian Embla. I'm a socialist and activist from Orlando, Florida. I work with a variety of groups on various issues. If Daniel's cousin wants to get in touch with me on Twitter, my handle is Delegate0. I'm not particularly active there, but I do answer my DMs. I would love to help build a campaign for Daniel's pardon. Oh, that's a great idea. Delegate0. Delegate0. Hopefully they're still listening. All right, 2 more. Ramana Manuel. The stories coming out of the Amazon warehouse that got hit by a tornado make me remember how glad I am that my college U.S. History 2 professor spent a significant portion of lecture time teaching us about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. I think that planted a seed for my progressive politics today. I think I had Kevin Baker on to talk about it. We've definitely done a couple of interviews on that over the years. All right, the final I am of the day. Is inflation the new national debt, as in Republicans pretend to care about it to shoot down damn ideas? They cannot get away with the debt anymore because it's become common knowledge that Republicans also raise the debt. I think so. I think you're absolutely right. We'll see what happens if it goes down in the next month. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth